shooting at Brown University and the shooting of this beloved MIT professor who we just heard from our station there, lived in that apartment with his family. We don't have any reason to believe at this time that it was a politically motivated attack on him, and we are waiting to hear more. Authorities have released absolutely no information about a potential motive there.
So we were just showing this surveillance video that law enforcement enhanced and released of a person of interest. Doesn't give the public a whole lot to go on. And we don't know how law enforcement made this identification. Could it be that they identified the person that was seen in close proximity that they released yesterday? Could that person have led them? Could somebody have recognized the particular clothing or the gait? But this, as far as surveillance imagery goes of a person of interest, not the most helpful to the public.
That's true, but it's painstaking work. The image quality is not that great. So what police were wanting to do is to fill in those pieces of the puzzle, because they had only the very beginning of the puzzle. They had the person of interest who they believe carried out the shooting walking in the residential neighborhood near the building, that engineering building on MIT's
What does law enforcement
campus.
think that person of interest was doing? Do they know?
Wearing the black mask, dressed in dark clothing, walking quickly in one clip, and walking in and out of frame in another clip. In fact, there's one clip where the individual is walking. It was like the streets come to a point and there was somebody else walking. You can see, you can't identify who it is. And the person they believe is the person of interest who carried out the attack, who they believe carried out the attack, took off running. So that was interesting, but they didn't have the connective tissue to piece together the path of flight. So they were trying to find, did he enter a vehicle? Did he enter a residence or a business? They had very little to go on. And at this point in the investigation, they do not have a slam dunk. They are looking at a potential connection. That's where we're at. And that is based on their painstaking work of collecting all this imagery that is out there, and it's terabytes of imagery. And they've been going slowly, looking at images of, are there things that look similar about these two locations? And they're looking at that.
I do want to ask you, when it comes to the lack of footage that we have, do we know what the reason is behind that?
So this is a good question. The engineering building, part of that building was outfitted with new technology, more cameras, but the area, the room where the students were prepping for their final exam, the room where the shooting took place, there was not that really good camera angles, cameras that can move around and really capture the full room. And so there was no imagery, according to authorities, there was no imagery of the actual attack. So you didn't see the person fire, turn, and leave. So they were having to piece together surveillance footage from outside, not just outside the building, outside the classroom, outside the building. And that is a huge challenge. And it's like not exactly a needle in the haystack, but akin to that. And it takes time. But yeah, 6 days later, here we are. Let's see where this goes.
Let's go to Rodney Harrison now, former Suffolk County Police Commissioner and a CBS News law enforcement analyst. Is it typical that after law enforcement has an ID hit, they don't immediately share that?
So during my time frame as chief of detectives in the NYPD, there were times that we didn't get a photo out or a video out to the public right away because we didn't want the perpetrator to know that we were on to them. In this case, this situation, I don't think that's the case. I think the perpetrator knows that we're on to them, we're looking for them, and they're going to use whatever resources they can to bring them into custody. And I really have to commend the Massachusetts station, Ed. He actually provided some pretty good information that the media has such a tremendous role in solving cases like this, which is there is a video, besides the Crime Stoppers hotline, there's a video provider hotline that you can provide for law enforcement if you see somebody that fits the description as well. So the media has a major role in helping bringing people into custody. With that being said, I do have a level of disappointment. The doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency to get a still photo, a breakdown of the individual who committed this crime to the public in a little bit more of a detailed way. And Anna shared that the video footage that was collected might not have been top grade, but they could at least show a little bit more of this individual walking in as well as egressing from that engineering building. And who's to say that during that time frame, while walking in or walking out, he didn't pull down that face mask at one point, which could potentially help get out to the community what this individual looks like. Maybe somebody could pick up something very, very slight. Once again, we could talk about the Luigi Mangione and his eyebrows. This person may have a certain color eyes that are distinctive. So I would like to see a little bit more urgency. Every second counts right now. And everything from getting a travel ban out to make sure this person's not trying to jump on a plane and leave the state or leave the country to, once again, I shared this earlier, making sure the cops are not at a tactical disadvantage if they happen to come across this individual, which is, let's make this very clear, armed and dangerous.
Okay, Anna, let's go ahead and round out some of our coverage here. Just share the latest of what we know and what we're still working to confirm.
So at this point, we know that law enforcement is looking at a possible connection between the Brown shooting, the shooting that killed 2 students and injured 9 inside that engineering building, and 2 days later, a little bit more than 2 days later, the targeted assassination, it appears, of that MIT professor. So that's where we are at. We are 6 days out from the Brown shooting. This investigation has been slow going, painstaking. It took them a long time to pull together all of the surveillance video that is out there. Took them a long time. It's unclear if they know exactly which students were in that room studying, because it wasn't like a formal class where they have a roster and they took attendance. So challenging investigative environment. They're going slowly. They're going to pursue this lead, and we'll see where this takes us.
And so when do you expect that we might get another update? Do you expect we wouldn't get one until somebody might be potentially in custody for questioning?
Well, authorities there in Providence have been updating the public every evening around 5 p.m. Yesterday it was at 4 p.m. They have been trying to provide the public. The problem is that they didn't have much to provide the public with. They didn't have the really good surveillance imagery to put out to the public to say, hey, can you help? Have you seen this person? They've done the best they can with the imagery they have, but they also didn't have an ID. They did not have a name attached to the imagery. So that is a tough place to be, and that's where we continue to be at this point.
All right, we know that the law enforcement is also probably going through, hundreds if not thousands of tips at this point?
Yeah, hundreds of tips flooded in Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, a few hundred tips where they had some kind of a name attached, and that they will look at every single lead and run down every single lead, regardless of whether it seems to come from a credible source or even not, somebody just speculating. They will take a look at it. That's their protocol. FBI is supporting here. The local police have been the lead. They've been the ones at the press conference. The district attorney, very involved. He's also been there. But generally, the FBI, that's their policy. They run down every lead.
Okay, Anna Schechter, thank you. Our thanks to Rodney Harrison as well. We are standing by for a potential news conference in Providence. If and when that happens, we'll, of course, take you there. Until then, our coverage continues with Elizabeth Cook in another hour of CBS News 24/7.
Welcome in. I'm Elizabeth Cook. We're following two major breaking stories at this hour. First, in North Carolina, where a business jet has crashed at a regional airport, killing several people. The owner of that plane is former NASCAR driver Greg Biffle. The plane is also used by NASCAR teams and Fortune 500 companies. We'll have more on the crash in just a moment. But first, we begin in Providence, Rhode Island, where we are learning new details in the deadly mass shooting at Brown University. Officials are expected to hold a press conference on their investigation any moment now, but authorities are still searching for the suspect in the shooting that killed 2 people and injured 9 others. Sources telling CBS News they have identified a person of interest in this case and are currently looking for that individual right now. A police press conference was expected to happen right now, but has since been pushed back to later on today. We can now report, though, police are investigating a link between the shooting at Brown University and the targeted killing of an MIT professor days later. Let's go to CBS News Boston reporter Penny Kmitt for more coverage on the search for the suspect.
This is my 3rd day in this community, and I will say residents we've been speaking with have been throwing this out there as a possible motive or some type of connection for several days now, and they're very shaken up by this. Brookline, as we know, is a typically very safe, quiet neighborhood. We've learned that this professor lived right here in this apartment building on the 1st floor corner unit, and now CBS News sources have confirmed that police are investigating a possible connection between the mass shooting at Brown University on Saturday and the targeted killing of this MIT professor. We have learned a lot about this MIT professor over the last few days. His name is Nuno Loureiro. He was a physics and engineering professor, and just last May, he got promoted to a very important position, leading one of MIT's largest labs. So this is someone that had a high up leadership position at the university. Again, just last May, getting promoted to that position. We've also been told by neighbors here that he had a family, speaking with parents who have children that went to the same school just down the road here as his children did. We know that he lived in this apartment with his family. So very chilling for this community, of course. But as I mentioned, a lot of people have been hypothesizing that these two could be connected ever since we got out here 3 days ago. So this is a huge update from our CBS News sources. 6 days into this investigation to Brown University, and then this shooting happening just 2 days later, of course, at another Ivy League school. And these information coming in from people familiar with this case and are speaking on the condition of anonymity. So hopefully we will learn more. People have been really wanting answers. This Brown suspect has been out now for several days. No one in custody. No one confirmed to be in custody here in Brookline either. So I think people want that peace of mind, Lisa, of knowing that at least someone has been arrested.
All right, let's bring in CBS News Crime and Public Safety Senior Coordinating Producer Anna Schechter. Anna, thank you so much for being with us. What more can you tell us about this possible connection between the shooting at Brown University and this murder of an MIT professor?
Well, we know that law enforcement are looking at a potential connection. And now this is new because early indications from our law enforcement sources after that assassination of the MIT professor at his home Monday night, early indications where there was no connection. And that's what we learned from our law enforcement sources. That has changed today, that they are looking at a possible connection. But as I've said earlier, they have had leads on the Brown University shooter who shot and killed 2 students and injured 9 others. They've had leads before. We're now on day 6. This is another lead that they are working on. So let's see where this leads us, because Sunday they had a person of interest in custody who they were questioning. Turned out not to be the right person. Then they released more images on Tuesday of both the person of interest and another person who authorities said was in proximity to that person of interest, and they're asking for help to find and talk to that individual, which is a little bit strange. Now we're on day 6, and police have continued to gather up surveillance imagery that comes from a variety of sources. That's surveillance cameras, ring cams, business cams, license plate readers, law enforcement cameras. They are looking at whether or not there is a connection. That's all we can report at this time. And we'll see if that lead pans out. But that's where we're at right now. And obviously the community in both Providence, Rhode Island, which was rocked by this horrific shooting. Now so many students have left, but the residents are still there, feeling very uneasy that the shooter has not been apprehended. And then of course also in the Brookline, Massachusetts community, where the professor lived, he has neighbors. He was living in a multi-family unit, and our sources told us that he answered the door and was shot 3 times. The assailant fled without a trace. So also a challenging investigative environment. There have been lots of rumors swirling about whether or not there is a connection to a foreign government who might be behind this. Right now, our U.S. intel sources say there's no indication of that at this time. But as I said, law enforcement is looking at a possible connection between the two that happened just a little bit more than 48 hours apart and just about 50 miles away from one another.
Anna, a CBS News source says it's the lack of usable surveillance video that's making the search for the suspect or suspects very difficult. What can authorities do now to narrow that search if they don't have that critical surveillance footage?
So what law enforcement needs to do is they need to track a path of flight of that assailant. So let's look at Brown University. You had this engineering building that in the location that the shooting occurred, it was not outfitted with the state-of-the-art HD cameras that can capture every angle. Some of these new cameras are actually constantly rotating around, capturing really in high definition what's going on. You did not have that in this case. In fact, there is no video evidence of the suspect pulling the trigger according to authorities, just the chaos and the aftermath. So that's a challenge for law enforcement. The only imagery available that they have of that person of interest was taken outside of that building. Once the person of interest crossed the street and is walking down that sidewalk where there are some residential homes there just across from that engineering building, by day 2, that is the most that they had of him. That is the only path of flight that they had tracked. Even now that they are looking at a possible connection between these two incidents, they don't have a full path where they can actually track exactly when the assailant in the Brown University shooting might have gotten into a vehicle and driven, and where this individual went, potentially going to Brookline, Massachusetts. They don't even have that. They are just still looking at this possibility based on the evidence that they have collected, and that evidence that they are heavily leaning on is surveillance video footage. Some of the imagery is probably going to be better outside of that Brown University area. What we saw, what the police released to the public, is grainy. It's really hard to go on. It's impossible to tell who it is. And police were not, as of yesterday at the press conference, able to identify who the person of interest is in that imagery, or who the other person who may have been in the proximity of the person of interest that they also want to talk to is. Yeah. They don't have those name IDs.
And Anna, we're on several days into this investigation. What do you think has been the biggest roadblock or maybe the biggest challenge for law enforcement? Is it the lack of surveillance footage? Is it falsely identifying a suspect early on that slowed them down? What do you think is really the issue here? Maybe it's a few issues.
It's a few issues. What you just mentioned, both of those things contribute. The fact that it wasn't like a normal class day, you had a study group, so it's not like they had an exact roster of every single person who clocked into a class. It was a study group preparing for a final exam. But let me tell you, the lack of high quality surveillance video, to me, is the #1 roadblock that hindered this investigation from the beginning. The fact that they wasted those hours on that initial person of interest and publicized that they had a person of interest in custody, yes, that slowed them down. But if they had excellent surveillance video that allowed them to track the path of flight, they could have caught up. But remember with the Luigi Mangione case, it took them 5 days. And this is the NYPD we're talking about. This is the best equipped police department in the country and possibly the world. And once the alleged assailant, Luigi Mangione, had left, it was really difficult, and it was up to good Samaritans, and thanks to those images that were pretty high quality that NYPD was able to put out. Remember the rear view mirror cam in the cab? That was the clearest image that we had of him.
Yes.
Because facial recognition software did not work given the angles on the face, the fact that in a lot of those images he was wearing a mask. But it was luck that those people in that McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania saw something, thought it was suspicious, his eyebrows were distinct, and they went to that manager and she picked up the phone. Even if she didn't sound on that 911 call, as we heard that she believed it to be credible, she still placed that call. The police did not think that when they walked into that McDonald's they were going to get that suspect. But as soon as they saw him, their instinct kicked in that yes, they had the suspect. So in this case, we're now 6 days out. Let's see what happens. We're expecting a press conference this evening. If today goes as the last few days have gone, where you have the mayor, the district attorney, the police chief speaking to the public about where they're at, I'll just remind you, so far at these press conferences, what we've learned is they've had very, very little to go on.
Yeah. All right, Anna Schechter, thank you so much. All right, let's go to Rodney Harrison, who is a former Suffolk County Police Commissioner and a CBS News law enforcement analyst. Rodney, thank you so much for being with us. Can you walk us through the process now, where authorities were able to identify this person of interest, and what happens now in the search for him now that they know who this individual is?
So there's going to be a couple of teams put together, and these teams are going to consist of Providence Police Department, Rhode Island State Police, FBI, and they're going to identify different locations where this subject may be. Is he on the run? Is he trying to escape from authorities in a vehicle? Is he in some type of wooded area? Is he stuck in some location and going to make a hostage situation out of this whole way that he's trying to flee from law enforcement and authorities? So what you're going to do is see a bunch of team of law enforcement agents come together, identify different locations, maybe family members, maybe friends, or other types of ways of identifying what his potential location may be. And, you know, using the media right now is going to be very, very important to get out to not just the people in Providence or maybe even in Massachusetts, other places where this individual may be. So the media's role, getting out a description, getting out information about this subject is going to be very key going forward to bring this person into custody.
And Rodney, what do you make of the connection between the murder of this MIT professor and the shooting at Brown University, and that being revealed that there may be a possible connection between the two crimes today?
Yeah, you have to be very careful. You know, there's a lot of speculation that there is a connection. You know, you have to kind of wait to see what the investigators over in Providence come up with, and let's wait to see what they share before we start making some type of suggestion that these two are connected. But I will say this, that there are some concerns with the lack of prioritizing getting information out to the public, to other law enforcement officials, just in case if somebody happens to come across this subject.
One more quick question, Rodney. What do you make of how the law enforcement community has handled these two cases? Do you think that they have been sidelined by the lack of surveillance footage, lack of resources?
I don't want to say the lack of resources. It seems like the FBI has a team of members out there. You know, the Brown University public safety is somewhat small. I did a little bit of a background on it. There are less than 100 public safety officers assigned to Brown University. But between the Providence Police Department and the Rhode Island State Police, you have close to 800 uniformed officers assigned to that area. So, they have a bunch of resources that can rotate in and out to make sure they're doing what they have to do to try to track this individual down. The concern is something that Anna shared is it just doesn't seem like we had the right technology in place to identify this individual, the way he was able to walk onto the campus, the way he was able to egress. There was no alert system. It doesn't sound like there was an emergency operation command in place. So there's a lot of questions regarding security measures that need to be taken a closer look at.
Ronnie Harrison, thank you so much for that insight. All right, I want to get to some other breaking news that we're following at this hour, this time out of North Carolina, where retired NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, his wife, and children died in a plane crash. That plane crashed while attempting to land at Statesville Regional Airport. That's about 45 minutes north of Charlotte. As you can see, that jet erupted into a very large fire. North Carolina Representative Richard Hudson confirmed the deaths of Greg Biffle, his wife, and their 2 children. The retired NASCAR driver first came into the spotlight during the 1995 Winter Heat Series. He went on to be named one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers. Now, in the latest update from officials, the airport's director says it does not yet have any information about what caused the crash.
Approximately 10:15 a.m., we got a report of a corporate jet that crashed off the end of the runway on the east end. When actually I came out, it was already fully involved. We've had multiple agencies, as we said, come. The FAA arrived about 12 o'clock today. They're taking over the scene. They're taking over the investigation. We have no information on any cause.
Joining us live now is Captain Laura Einsettler, a pilot with 30 years of flying experience with a major U.S. airline. Laura, thank you so much for being with us. Flight tracking data shows the plane departed and then looped back toward the airport. Does that give you any indication about what might have gone wrong here?
Investigators are going to be looking at things like, weight and balance, maintenance history on the aircraft itself. The Cessna Citations 550s are excellent aircraft for things like corporate and charter. So they're going to be looking at all those different factors that might have made an issue in this circumstance.
Greg Biffle appears to be a very experienced pilot. In fact, back in 2024, in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, Biffle actually used his personal helicopter to deliver aid to those impacted. And he posted videos from some of those flights on social media there. Let's take a listen to that.
We took water, supply, food. Everybody's reaching out for us to try and help them and get them out of there. I will absolutely get anybody out I can.
Now here you can see Biffle in front of his helicopter there ahead of one of those rescue missions. He said he pulled people to safety, dropped off food and medicine. Knowing Greg Biffle flew so frequently, Laura, how might he had handled the moments leading up to the crash?
Well, that's something that they're going to be looking at. What kind of condition he was in? Was it a single pilot situation or 2 pilots, which is always much safer to have always 2 experienced, highly trained pilots at the controls at all times. So they're going to be looking into how things were previously that might have led up, maintenance history, things of that nature.
I know that this plane was also used for Fortune 500 companies as well as other NASCAR groups, Laura. And I'm curious, these small planes, are there different rules and regulation when it comes to inspection, when it comes to actually flying these smaller planes?
Well, each manufacturer of the aircraft have their own set of circumstances and maintenance requirements, things of that nature. And then FAA requires certain additional requirements for safety when it comes to things like corporate flying, personal flying, things like that. So they'll be looking at all those different factors.
Do you find that these planes are just as safe as the bigger planes and when it comes to flying?
Well, flying for Part 121 major airlines, we have even more stricter standards for safety. Obviously, we're carrying hundreds of people at a time. So we always, in aviation, we learn from events so that we can make sure that things like this never happen again as we go forward, to keep that really high safety standard that we have.
Captain Laura Einsettler, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, a new batch of photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate was released. What they show as the deadline looms for the Department of Justice to release its files. Next.
Go to the ends of the earth.
We'll hit the heights.
A great adventure together.
And reach for the stars.
Star power. I like it.
So cool.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Something that's undeniable.
With mindfulness.
Innovative.
Magical.
It's like being a child.
And truly original reporting.
God, you do your research. I tell a good story.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
The 18-year-old soccer sensation igniting worldwide buzz.
How good is this kid?
The defenders are just bewitched.
Lamine Yamal.
You ever talk to the soccer ball?
I'm Major Garrett in Washington, inviting you to the Takeout. Politics, policy, people, and pop culture served up weeknights. What's on the menu? Plenty. The day's happenings with curiosity, informality, and humor. It's serious discussion, but we do not take ourselves too seriously. Who is a better speaker, Mike Johnson or you?
Oh, come on.
Join me on the Takeout. Streaming right here on CBS News 24/7.
You both had talked about going on Survivor together.
Right.
A Survivor contestant believes his sister was murdered
I'm sorry that I couldn't protect you.
and is determined to be her voice.
This is her speaking to everyone saying, don't let this happen to you.
48 Hours, now streaming on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Chilling with the queen. Her name is Gail King. Hey!
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning. CBS Morning.
CBS Morning. CBS Morning.
CBS Mornings on CBS.